to another episode of the Just Be You podcast. I am your host, Delia, and I am so excited for today's episode. This is the last episode, and I couldn't be so more thankful or just grateful for my guest today. And we're talking about transitioning and, where your spiritual man just kind of sets into it. And, this is a podcast where we're talking about all things self-development and how to navigate life, because we all know life can be troubling. But before we get into the conversation, please like, share, and follow the show. You can find me on Instagram at Motivation with D. Follow the show on Facebook at facebook.com/justbeyouPodcast. And we're going to get into it, guys. So Nia, how are you doing? Welcome to Just Be You podcast.
I am so glad. I love your enthusiasm. That was the thing. I'm like, I gotta spend time with this woman. So yay, I'm glad we're doing this.
Thank you. No, I'm just so excited that we got a chance to connect, because here's a little backstory, guys. First of all, follow up is key. That's number one. We connected, when was it? Like February, maybe?
Yes, it was. Yeah, maybe March, I think. I think
around that time. I had, put out a request for guest speakers on the show, and she responded. Don't ask me how I missed the email, but I missed the email, and then I'm digging back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody answered me. I'm like, I don't know if she's gonna respond back to me, 5 months or however many months later, but she did, and I couldn't be any more happier. Like, our energy is here, and she's such a delight. I can't believe
it. Thank you. And those kind of things I find kind of magical. I also believe that sometimes when things fall out of our vision, like out of our purview of being able to see what was in our email, sometimes there's a little bit of divine intervention. And so the timing is perfect. And when I saw the message back from her, I was like, yes, let's talk. Let's find out about this. So yeah.
Yes, I love it. Well, thank you again. I'm like, oh, I thought I goofed, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what did she probably think of me?
It's never too late to follow up. It really isn't. It's never too late. And I think that's something that, especially as women, we don't, we tend to go, oh, shame on me. We slap that shame on ourselves and we don't do it. This is proof positive that it's always worth it.
I couldn't have said it better. So thank you.
Yeah.
So Nia, please tell everyone where you're from and just give us a little brief, description of what it is that you do.
Yeah. So I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was just talking with some friends. I'm like, they used to call this the Paris of the Prairie, believe it or not. I don't think so. But we have, it's like the middle of the country, and it's quiet, but really amazing city. And I came here years ago, and I just can't leave. I love it here. So what I do, I'm a coach. I do mindset coaching with people, and I work predominantly with women.
Got it.
And women they tend to fall in kind of the Gen X millennial category, but it kind of runs the gamut. And then I say women, and this last year, more than half my clients have been men. So what? We try to hit our target market, but sometimes our target market is finding us in new ways. Yeah. And so I work with them on two things. Really, it's about connecting with themselves and trusting themselves, which seems so simple, but it really is hard when everything around us is telling us you don't know what you know. Yeah. And then the second piece is I really, during COVID, noticed that there was a lot of gaps with especially women and business concepts, really understanding the basics of business, because we're used to the hustle. We do a lot of hustling, even in our job, so how do we start to build that foundation and then allow things to grow and get easier? So I focus on helping women get to profitable in a way that it allows their business to grow the way that they really want.
Got it. So what are some of the basics to, the business? Because that's the first time I've heard someone present it to me like that. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm curious. Tell me more.
Well, I think we all have heard, you need to know who your client is, who your ideal client is. And we kind of do that. We go, oh, I like women, I like working with women. I like doing this. The problem is that we focus on who we like working with. And that's not always who wants what we are offering in the world. So we have to understand what our offer is, what it is, and who really wants it, and is it needed in the marketplace? When you start to unpack that in depth, all of your marketing gets taken care of. Your pricing gets really clear. Your ways that you engage with your clients and retain them, it gets so much easier. But we tend to skip over that and focus on marketing and being out in the world and making our brand. Your brand isn't for you. It's for your client, right? So when you flip that all around, it gets a lot easier. So I did all the mistakes. I did them all. And it was really during COVID that I got time to not only see what wasn't working for me and what was working for me, what I had learned over time. And then what I was seeing is a lot of people leaving money on the table. There was a lot of money to be had to support your business, but without a business plan, without knowing what you're about, without knowing your numbers, you're kind of left high and dry.
Yeah. So how did some of your clients take that earth-shattering news that we've got to start all over again and rebuild this foundation?
Well, you don't have to start over. And I think that's part of it, is that you probably are more than 30, 40, 50% of the way there. The problem is that you don't take the time to refine it and know it.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with that. We're always we're impatient as a culture. We want to focus on the dollars. And when the dollars aren't coming in, instead of looking at what are the operations that support dollars coming in, we tend to just do more hustling. We change our method. We change our business colors. We throw out a new font, and all of that doesn't really hit our client in the way that we think it does. And so it's more passive, and business really requires an active engagement.
Yeah. No, I feel that, because I look at some of, social media posts, and it's just like I see what people like engage in. Sometimes I'm like pretty shocked, and I'm like, really? This is how we, want to stimulate ourselves and just like kind of move forward. So it's a little like, but I'm like, I guess if it works for that person and, their audience, then I guess go for it. Not necessarily something I would want to do, but hey, everyone has their own thing. And if it works for you, then it just works for you.
That's right. If it does, it does. I think for some people, we tend to buy into the story that there's something wrong with us. When things aren't working, that there's something wrong with us personally, especially if you're a service-based business or a solopreneur, that your business is you. Right. Yeah. So if it's not working, it must be me. Right. Yeah. And so we end up, well, then I got to go take a class, or I got to go sign up with this coach, or I got to do these things. And sometimes it's just so much more rudimentary than that. There's no quick pill. We have to kind of go back to, well, do I even know what I need to make every month? Is my pricing right? Is it, if I do this pricing and I am busy, am I going to meet my bills, or do I actually get to profitability? And so those simple questions actually unlock what I call a business mindset. And that's a big shift for people who have been working, and you're working in their 9-to-5 job. I've been doing this for a long time. I did hands up. I 20 plus years working for someone else. And then getting out, it just seemed like what I did is I traded one job for another job. And I never really took up the mantle of being a business owner, which is a completely different way to think about the work. And that can be daunting, but it's really actually, it's kind of exciting when you do it from a fun perspective.
So what were some of the things that you kind of had to stop telling yourself as you went from like that employee mindset to that business owner? Because I know that is like a transition shift. It's like how do I, release some of these things that my boss has been telling me for the past 20 years and just kind of shift gears?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that it took me a while to really get, because even though I get going, and when it came to like success was about each individual client that I got, right? So I'd get a client, success, instead of it being about what am I trying to achieve and being goal oriented, that, this month my goal was this amount in income or revenue, right?
Yeah.
it was each thing. And then it became, I was really only focused on one client at a time versus having a strategy that was going to, when things were full, when I had 10 clients and things were popping, which is good, then what do I do to make sure that when those people are transitioning out, that I have new clients coming in? I was just feast or famine. It was like, let's keep going. So it's really about keeping an eye on the fact that there's no downtime. There's no time. I have to build a nurture structure that I am always engaging and meeting new people. And it's okay to have a wait list. It's okay to refer people. It's okay, and that mindset takes a while to trust and to realize that we always talk about everybody talks about, why do you want to be your own boss? Freedom. There is no freedom. It's a lot of work. You're marketing all the time. You're networking all the time. And really building that muscle, because it's new muscles. When you're working for someone else, they're bringing you all the work and they're paying you for it.
Yeah.
You now have to bring yourself all the work and make sure you're not going to starve in a month, So that's, I think, one of the biggest things. And that's the way I describe it. It's like learning to drive a manual car, stick shift.
Yeah.
There's a finesse. And when you're grinding the gears, I don't want to touch this. I don't want to do it anymore. I quit. And then, but once you get it, there's a finesse. There's a finesse between how do I work my work, the work that I have, and how am I growing and bringing in new work simultaneously. And once you start to get that, it's worth the grinding of the gears because life gets easier.
Yeah. No, I love that. So how can one begin to trust themselves? Because I know for me personally, back when I was in dentistry, I must have spent maybe a year running around saying, this ain't it, this ain't it, this ain't it. I know what everyone is telling me, but this isn't it, people.
Right.
And people would look at me they're like, I think you maybe need to go on a vacation. I'm like, no, this just isn't it. And I just had to follow that, whether everyone was telling me I'm completely out of my mind or whatever the scenario was. So how do people really begin to be okay, this doesn't feel comfortable, something is wrong, or it's an indication that I need to pivot and just kind of trust that that is something you should be doing?
Yeah, such a good question. And I think there's a couple of things within that. I think so many of us hit something where, whether it's through self-discovery or taking a workshop or reading a book, and all of a sudden it sparks something inside of us. Some people call it a spiritual awakening. Sometimes it's just an awakening. It's a moment of this ain't it. I love that. I love it. And I think the thing that we do is that's a very emotional experience. And what happens is we want to take action on it. And sometimes the action is we have to make these huge monumental leaps. And what I suggest is start thinking about what you want to do and start doing a little bit of research. Start talking to people instead of about, I know I need to do something, or something's got to shift. Instead of focusing on where you want to be, start focusing on what needs to change so that I can go there. So finding somebody who's doing that, what you're doing, what you want to do, talk with them, find out, get the dirt so you are prepared, get a mentor, get a coach, join a career transition group, start talking with your friends about, who do you know? Do you think this is a service that somebody would want? Do you think this is something that is needed in the marketplace? Or am I just excited about something? And so what that does is you're already doing your market research. You're building your support team. You are getting a real life look at what it takes to do what you want to do. So that by the time now there's no stagnancy in that. You are growing new muscle as you're doing that. And you're starting to, instead of being fantasy land or being it's kind of an all or nothing, you start to see, I can start to build towards this. I can start to grow in that direction. And you stop one of the things that I will tell you is, a lot of people, once they have like these epiphanies, they immediately want to leave their job. I want to quit my job. And I'm like, okay. Well, that's an idea. That's one option. The other option is, what does your job afford you? Does your steady income afford you to keep exploring and growing so that you're prepared for that transition? That's one option. Sometimes jobs will actually let you take courses that will help you with where you want to grow and go, that you can kind of discover. So start taking leadership courses, start taking business courses, start taking a finance course. Oftentimes your employer will pay for those things. They want it to come back to them. Of course.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. That's a risk that companies take, but you've also been employed for such a period of time that it's a benefit that you probably haven't taken advantage of.
Yeah.
You know, so those are things that being employed can actually give you a leg up on your dream if you don't make only emotional decisions.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I really, that part really resonated with me, because before I left New York, one of my employers at the time, they were cultivating like that kind of culture, but I didn't understand it at the time. A little bit, I mean, part of it had to do with the way they were implementing it, and I was just like, I don't know about this.
right.
But if I could have done things differently, I probably would have taken advantage a little bit more of what they were offering, and don't follow my lead, because I quit my job. But then again, I was in a position where like I could like temp and like make more, so it just kind of weighed itself out, and I still had like the freedom to build myself and not have to be tied to somebody else's schedule. So if you do it right, it works. But guys, as a whole, don't just up and quit your job, because
Well,
it
it's
just worked
harder,
out for
right?
me.
It's harder. And Delia, you know, some people have the ability, they're very resilient.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I knew what I was capable of doing, and I was willing to do it if it meant temping, if it meant doing things. Not everyone has that amount of foresight. The number of people that I talked to who thought that all I needed to do was create a website,
Really?
and clients would, oh, yes. People who really believe that or I just need to be on social media and create a presence. I'm like, it's so much more than this. Like, you understanding what it means to replace an income it takes a bit. And so it's worth giving yourself a runway, you know?
No,
So
absolutely. I mean, just building, like, I just think about my dental career, and I'm like, well, it took me like 10 years to like build that puppy and like get to an income where I'm like, yeah, and everyone's looking at me like I have all the answers to everything. I'm like, thanks, but I really don't, but I appreciate the compliment. So just looking at that, now that you say that, I'm like, people really think that, but then again, the culture that we're in today, it's just be a social media presence, and everything will come to you on a silver platter, and you'll be living your best life. So
and I mean, it does happen on occasion. Like, somebody like hits it big, good for you. It's not the vast majority of people. And I think manifestation is, it's a method. It's not a business plan. Right. It's so manifestation means you have to understand what you're actually manifesting. And if you have no knowledge of business, understand the business so that you have an idea of what you're putting your energy into or what you're trying to create. It's very hard to go to another country where they speak a different language and expect that you're going to get everything day one. Right.
Yeah, that is true. So at what point for you did your spirituality like kick in and you become more in tune with that to kind of make those pivots?
Let's see. It was right after my son was born. It was an interesting time. Years before, like in the early 90s, I went to massage school, and that was like an amazing, I lived in Boulder, Colorado, which is like, ooh, Mecca. And especially at that time, it was so great. And I went to massage school there and really connected with myself in a very powerful way. And ended up going back into the Midwest to start my own business, which I did. But massage in the Midwest meant something different. It was a little bit more, seedy, a little bit more like
Okay, a little raunchy.
a little raunchy. And I was like, this is not what I signed up for. So I went from this Mecca to like, kind of, this is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I ended up back in Minneapolis and decided maybe I'm more type A than I thought. I like to talk. I like to get stuff done. I didn't want to open up my own massage like studio for people. So I ended up going into corporate. And so after my son was born, this is like 20 years later, because I was an older mom, it was about a year later, and within the same week, I was looking for a new nutritionist, and someone at work referred me to this woman who was a Reiki person, and also just very, in the woo-woo land, I will say.
Yeah.
She was out there, and I worked with her, and she's like, why? She looks me dead in the eye, and she's like, why are you not a coach? And I'm like, oh, I've thought about coaching for 20 years. Yeah, I can't afford it. I got a baby. I don't have time. Who has time for this? Right.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, the company will pay for it. And it's very, very, very part-time. And I was like, oh, done. I signed up, got registered, everything like the next week. Then that same week that I got registered, I ended up meeting a Reiki master who I got a session with her, and while she was working on me, I had what I would call a spiritual awakening. I was laying there, and all of a sudden this light came over me, and this voice from deep inside me, it was like, you know this, talking to me. And I was like, yeah, I do. Okay. Signed up for Reiki 1. And within 4 months, she and I were sharing an office space. And I was teaching classes, and I was pulling back from all of my work that I did back in massage. I started down a path that it was unbelievable. And within a year, I had my first coaching client, second, third, and it just started. And I was working full time, had a baby. I was doing more, but when you're doing what you love, and it's fulfilling, like there was time, there was space. And it was amazing. So yeah, that was the beginning of the journey. And it's been, he's now 13 and a half. So yeah, so it was about when he was, 1. So it's been about 12 years that I've been on this journey. And
would you have done your journey the same way, or is there something that you're like, maybe I do this a little differently?
Actually, I really love my journey story, because I don't have an attachment to dogma very much. Like somehow I've taken everything at face value, and I have a really good internal, like that fits, that doesn't fit, that doesn't feel right. I have a really strong ethic, and it's helped me to build my business in such a way that I allow new ideas or new ways of doing things to emerge easily. And my clients are prepared for that. The people that work with me and know me are like, well, what are you doing now, Nea? What are you thinking about now? So I'm more fluid in how I work, but what's consistent is trusting myself and trusting the experience that I'm having, and always being willing to explore and question. Like, there's not a day, I do intuitive work, there's not a day that I'm about to have a session with somebody and I'm like, is this even a thing? Like, what is this? Like, what's going to happen? And then I have the session with them, and it's truly unbelievable. I sit there in awe, like, how did this even happen? How did I know this? And I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to do it. And every day that I can is just another day that I'm living a more fulfilled life.
No, that's cool. So when we initially spoke, you had mentioned that you teach spirituality as a way of being. So how do you implement that in your coaching? Are you doing Reiki, or is that something completely different?
So I am a Reiki master teacher. I I went to a conference years ago with all these Reiki people, and I'm like, oh, they are like bleeding Reiki. Like they love Reiki. And I'm like, I like Reiki. It's not really my jam on a day-to-day basis, but it informs what I do. And it really would, I think, I always joke around, I'm like, Reiki is kind of the gateway to people's intuitive qualities for a lot of people. But there are a lot of, there are a lot of pathways to that. But I think that it tends to open people up to things that they had repressed or not paid attention to before.
Okay.
And so what I do is, there's a way that we talk about spirituality, and it kind of seems like a destination.
Okay.
And the way I like to think about it is it's more a way of being. It's an interconnectedness for me. It's not religion. Although I understand, I respect, everybody's perspective on this, but for me, it's this interconnectedness. And that informs everything that I do. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a business plan with somebody, or if I'm sweeping the floors, or if I'm cleaning my garage or cleaning my daughter's diaper a couple of years ago. It doesn't matter, because it's how I am choosing to be in that moment. And it has a lot to do with presence and the power. One of the things I teach a lot about is the power of our ability to choose who we want to be and how we want to respond in every single situation. And that is a place of empowerment, which empowerment, that only we can give ourselves. And we get that every single moment. Even not deciding is a choice. And when we realize that, it opens doors to new ways of being.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I've been becoming more like, okay, this is my decision and I'm okay with it. If you're not okay with it, then that sounds like a you thing.
That's right. It's a you thing, right?
I'm like, and all will be well. Like, you want me to be in my element? Here's me in my element. Sorry, it doesn't align with, what your preconceived notion was of me. So I love that. Hearts.
Yeah. It's not easy to transition out of our culture of, our Western culture is, we are very focused on outward validation, external validation, external awareness. We're very hyper aware of what everyone thinks about everything that we do.
Yeah.
And when we make that pivot to being more internally aware, sometimes it feels like what we're doing is we're flipping off the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And once we get past that, we realize wouldn't it be nice if we were all aware and just moving through and okay with what's happening in the moment, choosing in the moment what we want. But we kind of have to get through that initial, like, oh, I have to set boundaries. I have to do all this work and get to that peaceful place with it.
Yeah, because sometimes I feel like, as you mentioned, like setting the boundaries, I feel like we're kind of like innately doing that, but not really realizing we're doing it. And then when someone, says something, it's like, oh, now I have to do it a certain way. And it's like, no, you're already doing it. And it just looks different because you're an individual and you're different from me. And it makes sense for you.
Yes. So, yeah.
That's pretty freaking cool. So what is, like, with your clients, what was one of your best moments with them that you were like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so happy I was able to help you, like, accomplish that?
Oh, that's really good. There's so many. And no, it's really funny because COVID was the first time I had done just 100% online. And so many clients I hadn't seen, I had never met. I only met them online. They were not even in the city or the state. So it just crazy, right?
Yeah.
To be in that. And so some of the things that I will just say is the things that I think are amazing usually don't hit them sometimes until a little bit later.
Yeah.
Because coaching is about goals, right? And what ends up happening is, as we work together and we're changing mindset and we're changing like how we relate with the world, there are bigger things happening around those goals that we're doing. It's later that I have conversations with people and it's like, my relationship with my mom doesn't even bug me anymore.
Oh.
Wow. What? Right? Or one of my favorite, I had one client a year ago who was dead set on leaving their job. Dead set. She's like, everything is bad. She was miserable. She was angry. She was just pissed, like, about everything. And I'm like, okay, it's never good to run from something. You want to run to something, right? Don't run from, run to. So how do we pivot that to building what you want to move towards? Well, she didn't leave. She thought she had to work for herself because everything in corporate was bad. Everything was bad. And so as we started to uncover this, as we started to dig into what she really wanted, we realized she's a frustrated leader. And to watch her like realize, like, I have been holding myself back, waiting for permission to step into something, and then to have her get that next job, which was a director role. And it was like, yes. And she has been rocking it ever since. She is like she's in alignment with her knowledge, her skills, her abilities, and her values. Unbelievable. And so to witness it's like watching, this blossom that it was amazing. And so it's fun. It's fun when clients come back and they're like, oh my gosh, Nea, you'll never believe this. I'm like, oh, try me. Let's talk. It's so exciting. I'm always waiting to hear what the next thing is. So,
because it's just so interesting. Just like when I have conversations with my own friends or my own peers, like the things that we don't think are related, they then become related. And it's like, oh, wow, like you didn't realize that if you would have just tweaked like maybe this one thing, or just, maybe said no to something or said yes to something else, it would just expand and kind of like give that ripple effect.
Yes.
Into other areas of your life that you didn't even think. So I love those moments.
Me too. And I think they're magic. And I think the funny part with some of it is that people come for one thing, and then what they end up really getting is something very different. Like we come in about this very specific thing, and then it changes. And that, I think, is the beauty of real coaching, is it's not about what I'm offering. It's not about what, you need to follow Nea's 5-step plan, which I don't have, by the way, a 5-step plan for success. And it really is about me listening and creating space for my clients to hear themselves speak and begin to trust themselves. Because if they lean into my plan is only going to work so far.
Right.
So they have to have their own knowing, their own wisdom. And I think that's really the beauty of coaching.
Yeah, I like that. So do you feel, because I hear all the time, or at least people suggesting, say no more because it creates the boundaries, or you should say yes more to open yourself up to opportunities. Do you think that there's a balance, or there's, one approach better than the other, or is it just, all fluff?
But no, I don't think it's all fluff. I think what we're learning is how to be discerning. That's the skill that's being developed. And so when we get into all or nothing thinking, life isn't that easy. Right? So here's how I describe it. So the name of my business is Yes Word Coaching. And the reason I have it as yes word, it's in the direction of yes. And yes is the language of the universe. So no matter what, there is no, well, in the way I have interpreted in my perspective is that the universe is not direct.
Yeah.
It responds. It responds always with a yes. So if you are thinking, this is all I can have, the answer is yes. If you think this is what I want to create, the answer is yes. And so it will continue to meet you with that energy of yes. And so how do we get into that? I think no is very important, but no and yes are kind of the same thing. They're a response, right? So when you know what you want to say yes to, saying no becomes not even really an issue. But when you don't know what you want to say yes to, no is what it's all about.
Okay.
because you're focused on what you don't want instead of what you do want. So that's the other reason that I think yes is, again, people get caught up in spending their energy on what they don't want. And I could ask it, we're very negative, our minds are negatively biased. They just are. That's the makeup of how our brain works. It's like, ooh, it's self-protective. I never
Yeah.
want that to happen again. And we'll repeat that over and over again. But if I said, what's something great that happened to you, it'd take a minute for you to pull that goodness forward. But
Yeah.
if I said, tell me about a time when you screwed up so badly. Oh, let me tell you, right?
Yeah.
So, right. So we remember when we, got a negative mark on a review, even though the rest of it was glowing.
Yeah.
Right. So negativity always gets more energy in our system. And it's not a decision. It's just the way we work. So the more that we can focus on what we want, the more that we can exercise that muscle and start asking those questions, the more no becomes not an issue, because we're glad to say no because we have more of this. We have more yes in our life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So would you say that, I guess, the biggest roadblock in someone's like mindset would be the negative self-talk and the negative thoughts, at least
Yeah,
from your pool of clients?
yeah. And I think, yes, I think it's negative self-talk, but I think where it's rooted is oftentimes in their story of who they are or what they feel they deserve,
Mm,
which gets into what is available to me,
got
right? Whether it's, well, I can't have that because I never went to this school. I can't do this because, right. So
it.
we have to find new ways to explore that, because there's almost always ways,
Yeah.
almost always,
Yeah.
so sometimes there's not. You can't go and be a medical doctor without going to medical school, right?
Right.
It's not going to happen. Like, I'm not, like, you can manifest it, you can dream about that all day long,
But it's just not gonna
but
happen.
it's not going to happen, and not in a good way, probably, right?
Right.
So then we look at, what is it about medical school? What is it about helping people in that way that you want to do? And then we and then what is blocking you from medical school? And so we start to look at, it's not an either or. There are many possibilities in that range
Yeah.
to be able to discover. And
Yeah.
so we're the ones that get ourselves stuck in an either or situation all the time, right?
Yeah.
So there are many ways up the mountain.
Yeah. I feel like I said that to somebody not too long ago, or maybe I don't know. I was talking about something, but I was like, oftentimes we use like the situation or whatever's happening around us to just, point the finger at, and it's just like, no, maybe you just didn't have a plan, or maybe you didn't think about all the other obstacles or challenges that you could be facing, and like going down that route. I'm like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's someone else's fault or that you did something specifically, but like, did you have a plan? Like, did you think about it all the way? Like, that's my one question. I'm
Yeah,
like, well,
it's
how much time did you think about this?
right. And how often, or they only thought about getting this far, and then once you
Yeah.
get there, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't. So those are good questions. And that's why we need people. Like, and I
Yeah.
think, not to go back to COVID, but COVID gave us an opportunity to realize that being alone with ourselves and our own thoughts can be really damaging.
Yeah.
There's some creative stuff that can happen with that, but we also need to engage with other people in a way that it is, where we're sharing authentically
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. And that's why I think it's so important I think that's why podcasts are so huge. I
Yeah.
think that's why TikTok's huge. Honestly,
Yeah.
how much do you learn on TikTok, right? Why is
Yeah.
it so addictive? Because I want to learn, but I also want to feel an engagement with someone.
Yeah.
And so we're
Absolutely.
starving for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I look at some people and I'm like, I mean, I guess if that works for you, but I always feel like there's a time and place for everything. And, there are times when you just kind of need to sit with yourself and just kind of like evaluate. Because during COVID, that's when I realized I was like, okay, I don't know when I stopped having fun, but I need to start having fun again because
Right.
like that's like my second middle name, fun.
Yes.
Or whatever space I'm in, I'm just trying to have fun, whether it's just me dancing to a song that's like playing in my head or just, I don't know, learning how to voice act, whatever it was. I was like, I need to have fun again. And how am I
Yes.
going to create the fun again? And I just started creating the fun again
Mhm.
in my life and just, doing stuff that I enjoyed again. So that piece is important. And then just like once you figure out what it is that you're missing, like find the people that will encourage that and foster that and nurture that, and
Yes.
just all will be well with the world again. But I just also feel like people are just like scared of that aspect of like, either asking for help or just putting themselves out there. But if you don't put yourself out
Absolutely.
there, how do you expect to see a change or feel better or just kind of do things in a different way?
Yeah. And I think, more and more we're starting to see different ways to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and we're getting evidence that it's true that we need each other. We're getting it's coming in all the time. And when you
Yeah.
listen to people, if you go and read biographies of people who are successful, they're never doing it alone. It's not like they woke up one day and everything came together. They needed help along the way. And we forget that part because it
Yeah.
requires us to be humble. And it requires us to take probably the scariest action of our lives, which is to ask for help,
Very
you
cool.
know?
Yeah. No, that's true. That is true. I have nothing else to follow up with that because that was well said.
Oh, I left you speechless. This is important, Dahlia.
I know because I usually always have something to say, and I'm like, yeah, you got me there.
Aw.
But what's one thing you did that was fun this summer since I was on the topic of fun?
Well, I love that you're on the topic of fun. And I'm not just saying that. I took a course with this woman, Teresa Thomas. She's amazing. It's called 50 Fun Things. And I thought,
Oh,
and of course I was like, I don't know, okay. So I went to the class, and one of the things that I realized in the class is I do lots of things for everybody else to make sure they're having fun.
yeah.
But one of the questions is what is fun for me? It was 50 fun things I could introduce that are fun for me. And as a result, I have a new like my husband and I cleaned out and set up my little 3-season porch the way I like it because I'm home all day. So I go out there
Yeah.
and do calls. I have gone on trips with my kids. I took my son to a concert the other day. So
Ooh, what
things
concert
that
was this?
it was just a little concert in the neighborhood, but it was just
Cool.
fun. Nothing big, nothing big.
Okay.
I think I'm too cringy for him to be with in that regard. So yeah. And oh yeah, and of course learning, all about the new lingo and slang. That's actually kind of fun. I'm learning all sorts of things. You
Oh
like my
yes.
drip?
Awesome. Listen, I'm now that I've moved from New York to South Jersey, I'm learning tons of new lingo. And the kids, they're like, wait, where are you from? And I'm like, New York. What are you talking about? Because I think the kids they call sprinkles in Jersey, they call them jimmies. And I'm
Jimmy's.
like,
Yep.
excuse me? I'm like,
Yeah.
I've never heard that word ever
I,
in my life. And half the time I'm like, I'm trying to figure out like the language. And I'm like, do you mean
yes.
like, is it supposed to be like similar to this or similar to that? And they're either like yes or no. So definitely the kids keep me younger.
Right?
Um
And humbler,
yes.
really humble. Really humble.
Oh
Yes.
yes, because some of them I'm just like, oh, but then again, I'm like, I was pretty outspoken and I gave it to you how I meant it when I was a kid. So I'm like, yeah, I guess this is what it feels like to be on the other end of things.
That's right. That's right.
It's been received. So where can people contact you if they want, to work with you in your services or just,
Yes.
pick your brain maybe.
Yes, pick my brain. Yeswardcoaching.com. So it's just yesword, YESWARD coaching.com. Or you can contact me at neaclaire.com. So I always like to have a one, little short session just to see if what we're doing is in alignment.
Yeah.
I do intuitive work, one-on-one as well as coaching. group coaching. And then there's an upcoming class that I am working on, which is called No BS Business Basics. So it's going to be online, and that'll be launching in the next couple weeks. So
Very
keep
cool.
your eye out.
I'm excited to hear more about that and see how that unfolds, because the name was totally fun. I'm like, okay, no BS, I'm here for it.
Right. Let's just get to it. Let's just get to it and have some fun.
Yes, I love it. Well, Nea, I want to thank you again so much for being on the show. I'm like so happy and thankful and grateful that we got to cross paths and just have this conversation. I enjoyed speaking to you the first time, and I enjoyed talking to you again now.
And thank you. Thanks for having me, Dahlia. It's wonderful. And I agree. This is delightful. I could talk to you for hours, which is a good sign. So that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And on that note, guys, this is the last episode of the season. So I will be seeing you for season 3 in a couple of weeks, or maybe like another month or so. I don't know, but you guys will be sure to know. Thank you for being part of this wild ride and just hearing from all the experts this season. I hope there was a takeaway for everyone, at least one thing. And if there wasn't, at least you know there's a reminder that you are strong, you are worthy, you are enough. If there's anything you guys ever need from me, just holler at me and I'll be there for you. So on that note, I will catch you guys on the next season, season 3, coming soon. And just take care, be well, and there's tons of information on this podcast to help you navigate through life. So I will see you soon. Bye for now.